So yesterday, guys, a report dropped saying that the Indianapolis Colts are interested in adding a veteran quarterback to the roster, and this makes total sense. Chris Ballard was not fired. I personally think he should have been. This team hasn't won the division since they took over. They've made the playoffs like a couple of times, but they had Andrew Luck when Ballard got here, and then they made it with Philip Rivers, but there hasn't been much success. So this is a make or break year for Ballard. Shane Steichen, his job is on the line. If the Colts have another disappointing season, I wouldn't be surprised if he's let go of. So the Colts, they're putting all of their faith in Anthony Richardson, who in his second season, yeah, he had his moments, but he definitely didn't progress in the way we wanted him to. And now with everyone's job on the line, the Colts are seriously considering adding in a veteran. Daniel Jones has been linked to the team, and I have a hard time saying that with a straight face, but it's the truth. Trey Lance, which, I mean, if you know Trey Lance, you're like, yeah, it's kind of a similar feeling as me. Justin Fields is interesting. I think he could compete with Richardson for the starting job. I wouldn't be shocked if Fields wins the starting job over Richardson. Kirk Cousins is a name that has not come up, but I am putting him on the thumbnail, and I think he'd be a good mentor for AR. He also can compete with a starting job. Jacoby Brissett was another name that came up as well. And another name, again, that I'm just putting as a Colts fan that I would like to see is Zach Wilson. Just someone that has a lot of potential that can compete for the starting job. And Zach Wilson, you could do a lot worse at backup quarterback, if I'm being honest. I prefer a veteran. I'd love Kirk to be our backup. But if it ends up being like a Zach Wilson type of guy, I don't think that's the worst thing. Or even Wilson could be like the third string, right? We could have Anthony Richardson, and we could draft a quarterback like day 3 or something, and then have Zach Wilson just to upgrade the QB room. Right now, Jason Bean is the only guy that's under contract. So Sam Ehlinger and Joe Flacco are not. So looking at AR, guys, he had 11 starts. He threw for 1,814 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. With his legs, 499 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. Now, down on the goal line, the Colts seemed unstoppable at times because they had Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. That's the beauty of Richardson, is the run game was fantastic with him. When Flacco took over, the run game was atrocious. Jonathan Taylor was getting hit before he could even get to the line of scrimmage. With AR, the holes were definitely there for him to find. But on the flip side, the passing attack was very, very weak when Richardson was out there. And I don't understand why. I think a lot of it is just Richardson not being where he needs to be as a passer with his progressions, his accuracy. I think Steichen deserves a lot of the blame as well. And then you just look at the weapons. Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman Jr., Adonai Mitchell. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. I know we don't have a Jamar Chase, a T. Higgins type of guy, but that's a lot of talent right there. I will say the tight end room is bad. Kylan Granson, Drew Ogletree, Mo Ali Cox, Will Mallory, that's not going to get it done. I do think the Colts personally should use their first-round pick on a tight end. This is a loaded tight end class. If they don't end up getting their guy, they could move down and accumulate more draft picks and do that. But at the end of the day, they just need a tight end. They need somebody who can separate, who can catch the ball. There was multiple instances last season where a tight end dropped the ball. Like I remember Ogletree dropped a touchdown against the Lions. I remember Granson had a big drop as well. Obviously it's March 3rd. The Colts haven't played football for over 2 months. So I don't remember every single instance, but I do remember the tight ends were as bad as it gets in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if we were last in football in terms of yards from that position. The defense, thankfully, we ended up firing Gus Bradley because there's a lot of talent on this unit, and it just didn't perform very well. I think the sort of icing on the cake for this defense was what they did against the New York Giants. That was just as embarrassing as it gets. You look up this game, they ended up scoring 45 points on us. And the Colts needed to win that game to stay alive in the playoff picture, and they didn't. The Giants at the time, were 2-13, just pathetic. So the defense, it just gave up a ton of yards. And then the offense, it just never got going. There was some explosiveness, of course, but it wasn't the underneath plays that were there. It wasn't the 5 to 7 yard passes from Richardson. Every pass he completed was 30 plus yards on the field, and that's not sustainable to winning football games, and certainly it's not sustainable to winning a Super Bowl. The Colts once were a winning organization with Peyton Manning and then Andrew Luck, of course, and now it's hard to even recognize this team. So I know Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields probably doesn't excite Colts fans the most, but I think it's good for this team. I think it's good for Richardson because you can't just say to AR, "Hey, look, you're our guy. We're just going to hand you the starting job. It's yours to lose." That can't be the case because I think that's why Richardson was called out for his lack of leadership, like his lack of accountability, because he never had a threat, right? Like Gardner Minshew was never starting over Richardson. He only did because he got hurt. And then Joe Flacco again. Like the Colts were not starting Joe Flacco over Richardson until he tapped out, and they faced, of course, a lot of hatred, and then they ended up benching him, and then he came back and played better. But the reason why Richardson came back and played better was because of the teams that we were playing, right? So you look at like the New York Jets were not a bad football team this season. The New England Patriots were a bad football team. Richardson did not play very well against the Lions. Opened up the game incredibly well, but and of course Ogletree did drop a touchdown. But Denver game opening drive amazing, and nothing after that. 172 passing yards. Like you're not winning football games doing that unless you're Jalen Hurts and you have Saquon and this and that. But Tennessee Titans, we nearly blew a huge lead in that game, 131 yards. We just ran the ball. You can't really bring up the passing in that game, but like the Titans are a bad football. They're picking first overall in the draft. Giants game, Richardson was out, and then Jacksonville game, Richardson was out. So the Colts had an easy schedule. They should have made the playoffs. They should have won the division. The Texans, that might be as bad as we see them in the CJ Stroud era. Like the Texans, I mean, I know they won a playoff game and this and that, but like regular season Texans, I mean, they weren't anything special. I mean, what did they win, 10 games? Like the Colts, with how easy their schedule ended up being, they should have been able to win more than that. Not to mention the 2 games we dropped to the Texans, both with Richardson. So, yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but I think it starts with just bringing in another quarterback who's hungry for a starting job that's going to make Richardson work for it, because if Richardson does win the starting job, we know he earned it. Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, they're not scrubs. Like Fields, he was on the Steelers, and they started off the season 4-2, and he ended up playing exceptionally well. I have his stats somewhere in my notes. Bear with me. Justin Fields, where are you? Yeah, so we're talking about 106 of 161 pass attempts, 65.8% for 1,106 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and an interception during 10 games. That was in 6 starts. So, yeah, that's my thing, is that if Richardson just didn't turn the football over, the Colts would have been a lot better. I mean, I know that's common sense, but I'm saying like a lot better. Like if Richardson just did not turn the football over, they would have beat the Texans in the second game. Remember, he threw that pick, and then Stroud threw a touchdown like right after that. There was just several instances where turnovers kind of led to our demise. And Fields also had 5 touchdowns and 289 total rushing yards in 2024. There's also been a report about Quinn Ewers meeting with the Colts. Of course, he went to UT, and he ended up losing his job. I don't think he technically lost his job, but he should have. I mean, he would be a backup though. Like if we drafted Ewers, he'd be strictly a backup. I don't think he's ever going to be a starting NFL quarterback. If I were Chris Ballard, I think what I would do is, you can't bring in Justin Fields because he's going to get money. Like somebody's going to pay Justin Fields. But I think what I would do is I would bring in either Jameis Winston, Jacoby Brissett, or Kirk Cousins, just a veteran that can still play, that will challenge Richardson. And if they lose the job, they'll support him and they can come in and help the Colts win games. I think that's what I would do. I mean, Justin Fields, just if you bring in him, it just says a lot about Richardson, and you don't have the most faith. So, yeah, I know I said I want competition, but bringing in the best quarterback available in the market, I don't know how much sense that makes, right? So, but yeah, like a Russell Wilson, a Kirk Cousins, a Jameis Winston, a Jacoby Brissett. But this season, if Richardson does not perform well, I think they should move on. They're not going to get much for him. They'll probably get like a couple of decent picks. Like, and when I say decent, I mean like they're not getting like a 2nd-round pick, maybe like a 3rd-round pick or something if they're lucky. Like, yeah, so I hope it doesn't come to that. But the Colts need to do something, because last season was as bad as it gets as a Colts fan. I mean, if I'm being honest, I know I sat through a season where we won 2 games, but like, come on, man. Just given the expectations, the momentum leading into the season, it just was a disappointment. But I'm out, guys. Peace.